I'm going to explain Chainsaw Man in 20 seconds without saying a single word. So if I started this video by saying Chainsaw Man is a complete masterpiece, you'd probably think it's hyperbole, you'd probably think it's an overstatement, but at the very least, you'd probably think it's just YouTube retention editing. And if you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you know that's far from what I want to do here. So instead, let me start with sharing a personal story. And I think if you stick with me, you'll see how this relates to Denji, the main character, and why Chainsaw Man can resonate so deeply with folks like us. So I spent 23 years in the Army, and the last 13 years of which were in special operations. So it was in the final weeks leading up to my retirement ceremony, and I was talking to a younger operator, about maybe 29 years old, and I was just reflecting about all the things that I've done. But unfortunately, that day, I was a grumpy old man. I was definitely old man yelling at clouds that day, and to the credit of this young man, a man who's in his prime, doing all the cool things that I did when I was that age, he was able to really bring me back down and unpack a lot of these things in a way that made me feel very grateful. The conversation essentially boiled down to him really bringing me back to those visceral moments, those cool moments. You know, when we're riding Black Hawks at night, legs dangling out of the air, wind rushing in your face before a jump, NVGs on your head with weapons loaded. Those kinds of experiences were really priceless, and you kind of forget how cool they were. And so the rest of the day, I found myself thinking about all the incredible moments in my career and feeling kind of a sense of gratitude. So now let's bring this back to Denji, the main protagonist in Chainsaw Man. He absolutely epitomizes the theme of not only sacrifice, but gratitude. He's a gracious character and is easy to root for. The guy needs a damn break. See, to pay off his deceased father's debt, Denji sells his eyes, his kidney, and even a testicle. And his daily life can be summed up by one word: struggle. Let's just keep it real here. When we first meet Denji, he lives off one piece of bread a day, and he lives in pretty much squalid conditions, meaning like he doesn't have proper shelter. To top this off, I'd say that his sacrifices extend far beyond the physical. You know, he's lost his childhood, doesn't have an education, he has no social life, and he's constantly devil hunting at the warm, ripe age of whatever he is. But despite these hardships, Denji finds joy in the simplest pleasures. A decent meal, a warm place to stay, and any kind of human connection. I wouldn't even call it meaningful. So that when he dies in the beginning, his fusion with Pochita, his only companion, which is a chainsaw, symbolizes a real sacrifice. A sacrifice that's the last shred of normalcy for a chance at survival. Really, really long, thin pieces of thread to latch onto to even keep some semblance of humanity. And to me, this reminds me of the immense value in what we often take for granted, and kind of highlights the resiliency of the human spirit through Denji's core. And yes, I think a lot of people can just look at this, laugh, and kind of throw it away because it's set up in such a way that it lets you kind of process it or defilter it and let it run through you if you don't want to acknowledge it. But if you do choose to acknowledge it, I think it's actually a real powerful statement about gratitude and being gracious in life for what you have. And I don't think this is an accidental theme at all. I think that this is a very well thought out, very deliberate way to really bring a destitute character into your forefront. I think that the character here, the kind of deliberate nature of how he talks about graciousness and gratitude and how this man just needs a damn break. And even his break is not even that good because honestly, he gets another pact with the devil, right? And for what it's worth, the iconography based around demons, devils, and all these other things is surely going to have a pejorative kind of connotation to it, meaning that even in his break, he has to kind of sell his soul to the devil, a devil, to kind of get even anything. And so even his break doesn't feel like a great break. And then, you know, spoilers ahead, I'm not going to talk about it, but even in the future, that break becomes an unbreak. So it's rough is what I'm saying, but he's always grateful as one can be in his situation. And I think that's the power of Denji in being able to root for a character like that. So Chainsaw Man was created by Tatsuki Fujimoto, and it first appeared as a manga series in Shueisha's Weekly Shonen Jump. The first part of the manga, known as the Public Safety Arc, ran from December 2018 to December 2020, and that run concluded at chapter 97. Following the success of the first arc, the second part of the manga is titled The Academy Saga, which began serialization in Shonen Jump Plus in July of 2022. This part shifts its focus on a new protagonist, so we're not going to talk about that. I'm talking about only season 1, but I just wanted to give you kind of the backstory and where we're at, and I want you to understand that Chainsaw Man is still ongoing. Okay, look, I'm old, and Chainsaw Man seemed really weird to me at first, so I really never gave it a proper chance, even though my whole family had watched it already. But now that I've watched the first season, I have to say it really is a masterpiece in so many ways. If you haven't watched it yet, I'm here to convince you to watch it, even if you're old. And if you're already a fan, well, hey, kick back, relax, get a cold beverage, and maybe listen to an old guy ramble about how he thinks Chainsaw Man's pretty cool. Now, let me start by saying I think the manga and the anime are two completely different entities, and I know they try to play things out beat for beat, but I'll be honest, the manga didn't strike me as anything special. But the anime, on the other hand, that's a whole different level. See, I've always heard about this Mappa effect, or this studio Mappa effect, and I want to say that Mappa took an average shonen and said, basically, hold my beer. Now, I'm not saying this to discount the solid writing and storytelling of the earlier arcs in the manga. It's more of a commentary on Studio Mappa and this so-called Mappa effect. So I heard a lot about this Mappa effect, but didn't really resonate with me until I saw Chainsaw Man. You see, I'm late to everything, and so being late to everything, after watching like the final episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen, which should have been one of their flagship shows, even better yet, let's not even talk about JJK, and let's compare it instead to Hell's Paradise. You see, the difference here is, if Hell's Paradise as a manga is a 9, then the anime lands somewhere around a 7 or 6.5. And that's really because of the adaptation and how quote unquote dirty Mappa did them. And look, I realize that it's a business and fundamentally it probably was overstretched, overconstrained. And I realize there's a lot of drama behind the whole Studio Mappa thing. So I'm not here to cover that, but I am here to say that Chainsaw Man is a masterpiece when it comes to what Mappa is able to actually do. And to steal a word that I really hate from the kids, it's peak Mappa. Anyways, to drive this home, I think Chainsaw Man is the complete inverse of what they did with Hell's Paradise. I think the manga might be around a 7, but the anime itself is so solid that it's pretty damn close to a 10. And this is the kind of progression I really wished for anime in the late 90s, but didn't really see kind of manifest until now. And I'm genuinely happy it happened. See, a lot of these thoughts with the action, with the explosions, with how they're coming out of buildings constantly and there's constantly movement. These are ideas I had in my head for a long time as an artist, but I really couldn't articulate them properly because I just wasn't good enough of an artist or an animator or anything like that. And when I saw this in action, it was pretty amazing to see. Granted, in my head, it was like aliens instead of demons, but I digress. So another anime that recently came out that gave me this similar next level vibe was Blue-Eyed Samurai. So I don't want to derail this video, but Blue-Eyed Samurai essentially reminded me of what I enjoyed so much about genres like Ninja Scroll. So this is Kenny's hot take, and you might hate me for this one, but Ninja Scroll evolves into Blue-Eyed Samurai, gives me the same feelings and renews that kind of interest and gives me that same excitement that I had before in a new way. Whereas Chainsaw Man is probably, to me at least, theme-wise, thematically, probably the next Bleach. The only problem here is, though, I know for a fact that Chainsaw Man is going to fall off a lot, given where the manga is and how the story unpacks itself. Unfortunately. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about season 1 of Chainsaw Man, so let's just get back to that and wrap this damn thing up. All right, back to my personal story. Chainsaw Man managed to remind me of what it means to be cool. See, this concept itself might seem lackluster, but in execution, it's absolutely spectacular. And Denji as the protagonist is so damn easy to root for because he's so damn grateful. The level of gratitude it takes to have sold so many body parts and still be happy just eating a piece of bread, well, that's something else. And again, I think it's something that the artist and the writer worked very diligently on to bring it together. Oh, and by the way, I won't talk much about this, but it's a damn sexy show. And as an older man, I don't really care about that as much. I don't have the testosterone levels that I had in my 20s, but It's a damn sexy show. It doesn't go overboard, and it knows its limits, and it constrains itself enough to be proper, I would say. All right, this is a huge tangent, but I'm going to talk about it because it's my show, and I want to talk about it. But I want to eventually do a video exploring this, but in sum, let's take something like Mushoku Tensei, which is jobless reincarnation, and set it against something like Record of Lodoss War, and you'll see where the comparison comes to mind here. But you see, there's a contrast there. You see, while Mushoku Tensei might technically be superior in writing, pacing, and even storytelling, I know it hurts to say, the characters in Lodoss War stick with me far longer after the credits roll, and I remember them viscerally to this day. Whereas, as good as Mushoku Tensei is, I can barely get back to finishing season 2 because the main character just isn't someone you truly can root for. He's not heroic, he's not noble, and he's not grateful. And that might resonate with some, but for folks like me, I prefer seeing people who deserve to win. So given that, back to Denji. Again, he's just a character who needs a damn break, and he kind of gets one, but his break is not even that good of a break. So given all that, I really like the way that they played that out. So in the end, I think Chainsaw Man stands out because of 4 things. 1, gratitude and relatability. Denji's sheer gratitude for life's basic necessities, or the bottom tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is just exceptional. And it's what exceptional human beings do. Number 2, the raw emotion in the action. The series is intense and the action is great. It's cinematic. It looks great. And, you know, I'm really glossing over this, but I can't say enough about it. As an artist, it looks really cool and the characters are designed very well. And it kind of harkens back to a day where like everything was meant to try to look cool. Every scene was very cinematic and it adjusted for the flavors of life, meaning there's a hue on each kind of scene and kind of setting that gives you a really, gosh, for lack of a better word, a cinematic feel, you know, kind of like you're being advertised to on each kind of panel. And number 3, Studio Mappa did an extraordinary job here. And I won't talk too much about it because there's plenty of better videos about it. And finally, number 4, the characters and the themes are super complex and they're layered. And so given that and given kind of some of the metaphorical speak in terms of what this gentleman thinks about demons, devils, and how they draw power from things, I think there's a larger kind of more contextual way to think about this story and the narrative and really unpack those in a way that does it justice that this video is not going to. So I'm going to leave that for later. So what I'm trying to say is under further scrutiny, there's a lot of thematic exploration about control, how devils and demons might work, and how kind of that ecosystem can kind of drive people and drive crowds and cults to really focus in and do things that they would otherwise not do. And in a way allows for humanity's kind of generalized nature to be kind of controlled, consumed, or manipulated by these devils and demons. And this is just kind of like in the eye of the beholder. So I'm not going to cover this at all here. And I really just wanted to say that, yes, I appreciate these themes and appreciate the thought. So instead here, all I want to say is I just appreciate that the author, given the action, given the sexiness, given how easy he could have phoned this in, instead layers in some pretty complex themes and complex kind of situations that folks like me can dwell on and think about throughout the day. And I think that's why Chainsaw Man really works. It hits all the layers and it's also just kind of fun enough and action friendly enough and sexy enough and goddamn it, cool enough to make you feel a certain way. All right, if you like what we got going on here, you're probably going to like what we're doing on our other channel, Untethered Adventures, where we take our D&D playthroughs and essentially turn them into stories. The first one is called Saga of the Fallen, and it's a story that we did in 3 parts, and it's already published as a movie. And the second one is called Skyreach, and that's going to be episodic. It's essentially about a floating continent above the great continent and the denizens above. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.